right? So, robust economy, okay? Inflation, finally, stabilizing. Inflation has been a bear over the last couple of years, over 7%, right? And now it's basically stabilizing down. This has a big impact. Everybody's felt it, and the cost of food, cost of fuel, everything. So inflation is coming down. That has to do, of course, as well as pricing. So the important piece of all this, stabilization. That's what we always want. And the Fed is obviously dealing with that to keep that in check. The next one we talk about is the aftermarket macro drivers. I talked about the GDP growth, of course. The forecast is looking really strong. And inflation dropping down to 2.2%, which, as you can see, hasn't been that way in basically years. So that's an important piece of what we're seeing as well. So that's stabilized, and that's what really matters to all of us here. The other one, the unemployment rate, right? The strength of the economy, right? Unemployment rate is basically lower than ever. So what's the issue there? We all know. What is the challenge that we've seen? And by the way, we've seen that same challenge for the last 30 years in this industry, is the shortage of technicians in the industry. So I applaud all of you that are here and are learning more and more about the business and learning more and more about the complexity of the technology that's being deployed. You're here. You're the future of it all. And that's a really important part of what we're seeing here as we go by. And so for the next one, we talk about the prices in the auto industry, right? And there's just a few call-outs here, quickly. Motor vehicle insurance, what are you seeing? You're seeing a lot of distracted drivers basically texting and doing whatever. Accident levels are up, insurance rates are up 20%. The one that's highlighted, motor vehicle maintenance and repair, up 7.1%. That tells us that there's a lot of elasticity, that can be passed along into the industry there. But that stabilizes, because what we saw is based upon the inflation rate, right? So that is driving most of that there. And then when you look at new vehicle costs, up 1%. Well, of course it's only up 1%. It already is up 24% from 4 years ago. And we'll get to that here in a minute there. So again, all-time low unemployment. You can see the forecast is looking very favorable. Again, strength of the economy, strength of what we expect. Supply chain. Okay, when you think about it, you saw a lot of volatility in ocean freight for shipping product in from overseas and so forth. You saw the container costs go charging up. Basically, at certain times, it was up 30,000 a container. It used to be 3,000, and that is now stabilized, which basically means we can bring the products in and do what we have to do with that, and it's obviously, again, more affordable. The other one, chips. There's a lot of, certainly if anybody follows the video, whatever, chip production is improving. More and more manufacturing. If you recall, the issue with the chips was that basically a lot of new car vehicles couldn't basically be manufactured because of it. Well, now they've caught up to it. There's a little softness in the tech sector, so a lot of the chip production is going right to the car manufacturer side. Remember, we want to see new car sales go up back to 16.5, 17 million a year. That's the future as it gets post-warranty, right, after 3 years or so. So that's an important part of it right now. Last year, 15.5 million units were basically sold, new cars that is. And as I said, the stabilization on the ocean freight, really important for us going forward. And as I said, on the lead time with the chips, it's basically there. The car manufacturing, they're back to what they said is the optimal inventory level. It's there. The issue that you have today with car sales is the interest rate. The financing is an issue. The interest rates have to come down, as we all know. And as that does that, we clearly will see more new vehicles sales. Now, the next piece is on the consumer side. When I mentioned to you the opportunity, okay, let's just take a look at what the aftermarket, the independent part of the aftermarket has. Historically, the independent side of it versus dealership, that's 71% of the market share. 71. We have 71% of the market share. That's huge. And what are you thinking about it? What is this forecast here? And I'll show you what they're showing right now. Dealers are basically looking to grow $4 to $5 billion a year over the next 2 years in their business, okay? Independents are 9 to 10 billion, twice the dealer, which means the independent side of it, our side of it, is capturing more market share. That's a huge opportunity for us going forward. And when you take a look at customer profiles and you look at the DIFM side, Those of us who put parts on cars, right? What matters most is driving cars into their shop. Obviously, age of vehicles, simple one there. Post-warranty, we got all that. The two that really stand out here is what basically the consumers said. They said when you basically are choosing a shop, what is most important to you? The first thing is good prior experience. Number one, hands down. The second one is trust in the shop and the people that work in the shop. And so you're doing a terrific job basically building trust and confidence out there. And by the way, you outperform the dealership group 2-to-1 on that. And when you look at the difference on the DIY and the DIFM side of it, you can take a look at where the business is. The business is basically leaning and moving more and more towards the business that you're in. And that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I mean, the complexity of cars is continually changing. And the fact of the matter is, I know myself, lift up the hood, I mean, I got to cover it. I don't even know where to start anymore. And so there's a lot to do. Obviously, you know the diagnostics, you got to be able to reset it, and do all the things that are out there. So this business is getting more and more towards, obviously, the do-it-for-me side. Your business, okay? 280 billion versus 77 billion on the DIY side of the business. Vehicle trends, okay? Vehicle trends. Number one, vehicle sales and inventory, I mentioned, is improving. They're getting back to the inventory levels they need to be at. They've seen a full recovery, according to them. Electrification, right? Obviously, we've seen growing in that, but I'm going to get to that in a minute there to tell you the percentage of the business and what the forecast is all the way through 2030. Okay? The important thing is, I think there's a lot of exuberance on the EV side, including in Europe, as you know. And everybody is sort of backed off, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But the most important one for us is why we're here today, what you're going to learn with all the classes that are there. It was always pointed towards the third bullet here. Vehicle technology is on the rise. 70-some-odd% of the vehicles being built today have some form of ADAS in it. All right, so that's going to be critically important for us to basically look at that opportunity and how do we capture it. And I know there are a ton of classes basically being, obviously formed here over the next couple of days, and those are sold out right away. So just quick numbers here, okay, just to show the size of the prize, right? Number one, there's 284 million vehicles, light vehicles and light trucks on the road right now here. 284 million. Last year, 15.5 million new vehicles were registered. Age of vehicles is now 12.5. Every year, you know, it ticks up and up, and the scrappage rate is basically maintained, basically a steady flow there. And mileage is increasing. If you go back to prior to 2020, 3.3 trillion miles driven, and now we're at 3.2 and climbing. So it's bouncing back. Big element of that, of driving that, is stabilized, basically affordable fuel, right? So that's a critical part of all of that. And when we look at the type of vehicles, we know trucks, right? SUVs is the lion's share of the growth that we're seeing in new vehicle sales. As even passenger cars, a lot of them obviously have discontinued passenger, I think of Ford and companies like that. But at the very end of it, that segment is the one that's growing the most. Now, the sweet spot. This is important because this is post-warranty. This is when it comes in. This is what we call the most important part of basically our capability to drive car counts into your shops. Okay? This is it. Those vehicles that are 4 to 11 years old. And what you can see here is basically the vehicles in operation. You can take a look at the numbers that are there, both from last year and this year, and what the forecast is going. And then you can look at the mileage that they basically are being driven. So look at 6 to 13, 23, more miles driven on those cars than ever, which means more service, more maintenance, maybe more breakdowns. Obviously, car counts for you. That's what it comes down to. And when you think of the vehicles in operation, what does the future look like? Here's the important thing is, every single year we're adding millions of more vehicles on the road. And if you look at it, as I mentioned to you, the 284, the forecast for 2027 is 293 million, adding basically another 9 million vehicles on the road in the next basically 3 years, right? So, When you take a look at it, we saw a decline, obviously, in new car sales a couple years back. I talked to you about the chip shortage. We understood exactly what was done. But it's bouncing back, right? Forecast is getting back up into the 16.5 million units per year. I'm not so sure we're going to get back to 17.5 as we had seen in prior years. But 16.5 is a real healthy number for our business. And anything basically in that range is good for us in the future of this industry for sure. And what you've seen over time, as you can see here, resilient growth. This is a trend line that basically continues on. It just basically tells you the health of the industry, how strong it is, how resilient it is. It doesn't matter. We talk about recession-proof and all that. Of course it is. Transportation. We have to have it. Housing, food. Those are the three that matter. Right? You're in the heart of the most important one there is right now. One would argue on food, but I would say transportation clearly is an important part of it. And again, I mentioned to you light trucks is driving more and more new car sales. And obviously we're basically honing in on everything relating to that as we see more and more of that developing as time goes by. When you think of cars as shrinking, at an accelerated level, and that basically is because we talked about, the crossovers, CUVs, SUVs, a lot of things going on there versus basically having passenger cars. And you can see the forecast, as I mentioned to you, through 2030. Every one of these years shows over 60 million. 16.4, 16.4, 16.4, 16.5. These are big numbers, right? New car sales. That's the future, right? After 3 years, they come into it comes into our part of the business. So it's a healthy environment and healthy basically forecast for new car sales. Really important for all of us, and certainly when we look at our long-term view of the industry, which is, as I mentioned to you, stronger than ever. What kind of drives some of the challenges on even selling even more? As I mentioned to you, we had sold 17.5 in prior years. Look at the cost of what's happened with the average vehicle. This was in December of 23. $49,000 was the average cost. When you look at some of the trucks out there, the average cost of a truck is like $70,000. And so the fact of the matter is that we saw basically this big rise, up almost 25% over the last 4 years or so. And that's basically having an issue. But it's not just the cost of it, it's the cost of basically financing it. And so until the interest rates basically become more affordable, it's still going to basically, that's why they're predicting that the actual vehicle count will be somewhere around 16 to 16.5 in the future there. Now again, one of my interesting subjects that I have to talk about often is talking about the EV outlook, right? And so if you go back, over the last couple of years, that's all you heard about from everybody. Oh yeah, by 2030, no more ICE vehicles, nobody whatever. Of course, all of that stuff is impossible to do. We already know how many, I already told you there's going to be 300 million vehicles on the road by then. So the important thing is, what is the impact of EVs really going to be? And so when you look at it, there's headwinds, obviously, the car manufacturers building it out, they've all backed off of it. And I personally believe that Toyota had it right from the get-go. That's the reason why they're the #1 car company in the world. Hybrid was the key there, and it seems the consumers are right on board with that. And of course, the government basically incentives, what we obviously have all seen, when that incentive basically expires, EV sales plummet. It's that simple, because it's not affordable according to consumers here. So there's a lot going on there. On the tailwind side, we already know that everybody's now backed off of what they were thinking about before on their vision or strategy going forward. They're back, obviously the cost of it is considerable. Obviously the other one is talking about raw materials to build these batteries. What do you do with them when you're basically done with them? The fact is, they're not basically recycling them, as we all know, right? So there's no real incentives now. We've heard some of the, obviously, the predictions now, even in Europe. Same thing, they're backing off kind of the EV side of it. But regardless of it, it's coming, and we want to be prepared for it. And so that's why we're here at the STX. We've got all these classes that are devoted to high voltage, electrification, all the things that are out there. So when it comes, we'll all be ready for it. That's the name of the game. And so let's just take a look at what we've seen on the growth of EVs over the last so many years. So in 23, ending at 2.1 million units. Now, let's put that in perspective. Let's go back. There's 284 million cars running around on the road. 2.1 of them are EVs. Okay, so you can do the quick math there. It's not basically a major factor at the moment. But here's the one that I really wanted to make sure that you saw. I mentioned before that the actual VIO, the vehicles in operation, is going to grow to 300 million vehicles by 2030. The prediction basically on EVs is 15.3 million on the road. That means it's only 5% of basically the entire car park. So when you think, you just have to put it in perspective. I think, there's a lot of what I call a lot of interest, of course, but I think, again, it's centered in certainly certain geographic areas. Obviously, California, as we all know, but generally speaking, it's going to be a factor. And we're going to be ready for it when it basically becomes a factor. That's the most important thing. When it matters to us, when it comes into the shops and more will come out as time goes by, it's still a small percentage of the total. That's the point I wanted to make. And so what's more of a factor in our industry is, of course, this advanced driver assist system, right? All the things that they basically provide there, as we know, obviously forward collision, connected vehicle, those things that are annoying, like the lane changing thing, we got to put the signal on, and things like that, or when I'm drifting into my lane and it basically gives me a warning that it's happening. So for us, it's all about ADAS, it's all about basically all these classes that we're doing here over the next couple of days. There's a tremendous opportunity for us, and as I mentioned before, over 70% of the cars out there are equipped with some form of this. So this is really the future side of it. The other topic here for us, and this comes from, obviously a survey that was done to service shops, obviously across the board specialists, everybody, and they came back and said the number one top issue is basically access to data. And we know how important that is. To get access on diagnostics, information about basically doing the repairs, and all that. We know that's number one. And so obviously, what's important is basically getting behind it on the legislation side. For those of us who were with Bill Handy yesterday, he was here. He was with me at the instructor dinner last night. He's the president and CEO of AutoCare. He had to leave today because there's some legislation going through in D.C. that he had to be there for. But he has basically been spearheading this all along. We've supported him along the way there. So that's an important part of it. There's a lot of effort to basically make this happen. We want it to be similar to what it is in Europe, right? Europe is total access, which is, of course, to me, that's basically the most important to basically for ourselves, of course, is having total access to repair anything we want. The dealers want to charge for it, then charge for it. At the end of it, we just want it, because we want to basically end up making sure we can do those repairs. So, for myself, I basically obviously talked about, the instructors, best in class, obviously, our customers here. Of course, what matters most to you always matters most to us, always. And we really share your passion for this. But I really wanted to take a few minutes here and just roll through here. I really want to basically take the opportunity to thank our supplier partners. They have been critical in basically us being able to put these events on, especially with the expo. And as I mentioned before, 365 suppliers are here working with us together. And they really basically deserve a round of applause. So if we look at it, so let's hear it for our supplier partners. They are excited to get out and have an opportunity to listen to you. And I've heard this from them from every STX we've ever been at. They basically say that the information that they get from you, because you're the experts, you're the ones who basically are diagnosing the car, you're fixing the car, repairing it, maintaining it, whatever it is. The information that they get from you is most valuable. And so please, spend time talking to them about their products, telling them what they do great, and obviously you can tell them perhaps how they could improve. But I think the important thing is your feedback is critically important to the success of it. And then, of course, I just wanted to tell you that we've already, first of all, do you like this, the Gaylord Hotel here? Is this awesome or what? And we had them before, if you remember, down in Grapevine. And so the next one is going to be the Gaylord in National Harbor, which is in the D.C. area. And you'll get more details about that, but we booked that already and excited about that opportunity. But hey, we're here now. Let's enjoy and take advantage of that. So the takeaway this morning for myself and for you, I hope, our industry is stronger than ever. I mean, it's growing. All the numbers speak to exactly what we want. Capturing more, basically, market share from dealers. Doing all the things that basically we're doing, you're doing, to make sure that consumers are taken care of. They've got the right to go to the independent side of it. They have the right to go and get their vehicle repaired where they want to get it repaired. That's what this is all about, and that's the support they get from us. So I want to thank you all for being here. You made it happen. Terrific. Have a great STX. We'll talk to later on tonight when we have basically a highly decorated Navy SEAL, Marcus Luttrell, which we all know is the lone survivor. We'll see him tonight. So enjoy your first day of training.